Maps group to present their work.
Sure thing. Thanks, Meg. Hello, everybody. Again, Brian Haberberger, one of the chairs. We don't have a ton of time, so I'm going to be going through things pretty quick, just sort of trying to show you what's out there. We're going to leave a little time at the end for questions, and then, of course, our contact information is all over the notes. If you find that you want to talk about something when we're done, just reach out. This link right here is a story map. We didn't rehearse or practice, so I might not use this story map necessarily to navigate my speech, especially because I have to bounce over all these other links. But if you open that up, it is sort of a good thing to use to follow along with what we're going to talk about here. Thank you, Stace, for putting that together. So the background. We'll start with sort of 2017. It was when the first issue was put in that said, hey, we're thinking about geospatial data and IIIF resources. We have this thing like NavDate where we can provide dates. Why don't we have a thing where we can provide locations or coordinates or something? And you can see even way back then, they were already thinking about GeoJSON and some of the other technologies that were out there and what we might do. So what I would like to start off with saying is it's not like everything about this was IIIF Maps idea. The works for what's going on here has already been around. And especially with other communities that are out there, we're young in comparison to a lot of the other communities. So like the Open Geospatial Consortium and GeoBlacklight, there are communities that have been talking about this kind of thing for a long time. And I want to say I certainly leaned on those people to get help with writing this and figuring out what to say and what to put together for this community. So there's that little bit of background, sort of where it started. When I really got involved was when IIIF plus Maps happened at Stanford in 2020, and we offered the link in that agenda, which is to these notes. It was a few days just focusing on, what are the commonalities between the geospatial practices we're doing? How can we connect IIIF resources to geospatial technologies that are already happening? What can we do so we don't have to reinvent the wheel, essentially? And start to do standardized interoperable coordinate stuff with IIIF resources. So that's what you'll find a lot of rhetoric on in these notes and in the PowerPoints here. I'm not going to go through them because we don't have time, but I just want to let you know those resources are out there. So that's a little bit of the background, a little bit connected with the motivation of what really got us started. If you want to see our presentation from the 2020 IIIF Maps Annual Conference, that's what this link is. There's a lot of good demos in there from the community because we hadn't quite gotten as far along technically. So we were really interested in just seeing what the community was doing and what that common thread was we were trying to develop around. So there's a little bit more flashy and community stuff in there if you really want to learn a little bit more about what the community was doing even before we started doing this. And this link right here is to IIIF Stories. If you don't know about it, this is where people essentially put up their use cases. So what I offered you was the link to the ones about maps. So part of my motivation and IIIF Maps motivation is, well, there seem to be a lot of stories involved with maps. Again, not going to go through the list, but they are up there. And we encourage you to add something to this. If you notice your use case isn't at all covered by anything in here, you can put it up as something for us to think about, as we go along through our technical developments. Good. So the whole point is that NavPlace is released. We officially got it moved into main yesterday, I think, and there may be another tweak here and there to come, but it is out and it is published. Here's the TRC vote from it, and I'm going to show it because it got unanimous, and that's how it got through. So if you want to link out to sort of the discussion and go through and see, what the comments were, all the pull requests, what had to change before it was accepted, that's where all these links go off into, so you can sort of see the voting process. You'll even notice there was one before this that was rejected, and you could go and read why. It had very good reasons, and we've accommodated. And then, of course, the link to the extension itself. Hooray. I am going to go through this, but just quickly, we're going to go SparkNotes style. So the document gives you a little reasoning as to why we decided to do it, mainly because IIIF Presentation API 3 didn't have something specifically for geographic coordinates or anything like that. And again, drawing that correlation with NavDate, we knew it's a gimme for these resources, right? Time and place are a gimme. We need to be able to do that with these things. And that's sort of what drove us to write an extension for the spec itself. We did believe this shouldn't be done through annotation or anything like that. There should be a specific resource property for IIIF resources for geospatial assertions. Here's an example of what it looks like. So it's just a resource property for your object, and it itself is an object that will always be a feature collection. Whether there's 0 or 1 or many features in it, it's to be a feature collection. And that's sort of going in line with like what the new presentation API stuff and the new linked data stuff is doing for those. Well, there could be 0 or there could be many moments. A lot of it just folds into, well, then set up the semantic for the many and then always stick with that. So that's why it's a feature collection and not just a feature or an array of features. This tells you how you can use it. The good news is you can use it with any of the good resources. So a collection, a manifest, a range, or a canvas, which is nice. We allow it to be referenced and embedded. So here's just gives you a little something on how to do that. We explain a little bit with the linked data stuff behind what's going on. We tried not to focus on it, but in the end, you kind of have to get this to work in a linked data friendly way. So I won't get into that here, but this goes through a nice explanation of that. One of them being just the simple ways on how you set your context, and another being going through a lot. Why linked data? Why do we do it? What do we have to do to be compliant? And then in the end, which is something I learned to do from doing cookbook recipes, we offer a full manifest example, which I think will be very useful for people. So here's a real simple manifest that's used in a lot of the other recipes. But what's cool about it is we were able to put NavPlace on it here. And so you just have an example of what a manifest might look like in the wild when you're doing that. So that's what the extension is about. When you're trying to implement this, that's a good place to go. So sort of learn the what and why of what you're doing. So how do you use it? What should you expect when you use it? A good place to start whenever you're thinking, how might I use that, is the IIIF Cookbook. So really quick, I'm going to show you a couple of recipes that are underway. So this one goes through, here's what you can expect for it to look like. And I'll actually go show you some views. So I'm not going to focus on this now. But the idea is NavPlace is essentially throughput for your GeoJSON. If you have GeoJSON in NavPlace, we expect those coordinates would be drawn in a web map platform. So here's a Leaflet, for example, where I handed it that manifest with NavPlace on it, and it knew to make the dot. And then I built a pop-up so you can click on the dot and get your information. A little bland, not too exciting. Just the point is just trying to show the real basic functionalities and why and what here. Again, all of these offer full manifest examples, so you can go see some other reasons as to why you do it. And every single one of these is connected with a use case, which might help you understand a little more of what's going on. So those are good places to kind of go and start and think about it. This one's worked up for one NavPlace on a manifest, and this one's worked up for you have NavPlace on your canvases inside of a manifest. So I had 2 canvases, so I get 2 dots. Again, a little bland, but the point is just to show sort of the basic functionality we're looking for here. Why would you do it? It's because you want to be able to see your resources on a map of some kind. Let's not go too much more into that. So I'm just going to show you a couple different views from implementations that are sort of underway right now. You heard from Matthias during our introductions. He does Chronoscope World, and it's fun because I get to show off what some of this stuff looks like in Chronoscope now. So if we link out to the Chronoscope and we provide it the IIIF-content, which is the content state API. Basically, I've said, here, Chronoscope, here's the link to that manifest. That manifest had NavPlace on it. And you could see it drew up in his platform, which is really meant for showing like old maps, geo-referenced on top of current maps. That's why he said he's a time traveler. He does a really good job of representing sort of how the world was represented spatially through time, and then you can put the old map where the new map is and sort of see. So this is where it thought it would be in his old world map, and underneath, if you were to hide this, you would see it like on just your standard WGS84 leaflet kind of view. And then with his too, you can click on it, and he's actually grabbed the image. So that's a little bit cooler of a pop-up than what I had. And then the other things that are fun when you're getting into these web map platforms is that since you provided the coordinates this way, you could hook into sort of freely available functionality like a zoom in, or when you want to look at what it might look like in these other geo services. Now you could link out and go see what it looks like in Google Maps and Apple Maps and Google Earth and all of that. And hopefully other people in the community software, right? I would love if you could link out to my software. We just haven't talked in a way to where he can offer a button into my stuff yet. So there's an example of what it would look like. This is a manifest with NavPlace on it. So you expect you would see that drawn somewhere in the world where that point is the coordinates you've provided. So that's a little more flashy than what I was just planning to show, something very simple, same thing, right? I just hand in that, that manifest from that recipe to this software. It's working with a leaflet. It drew the point on the leaflet, and I grabbed label and description. Right, so not super flashy, super fun. This is sort of just the basic, here's how you get it in, connect coordinates with your resources, and get the view. That's sort of the workflow, right? Have a resource, have your coordinates, make the NavPlace on the resource, put your coordinates into it, and tell your mapping platforms to look in NavPlace to find those coordinates. That's sort of just the workflow we've set up here. So those were both off of this recipe, and so this manifest with that one NavPlace on it, that's what you saw drawn, was this guy. You can also do it referenced. I had shown you that when we were quickly going through the document, that you can also have a referenced feature collection. And just to show the proof on that, I did that with my REARM geolocator. I had it go through and process a reference collection, so it actually resolves that feature collection in the background. And I know it was a terrible starting view, but it actually comes in and draws it, and this happens to be an outline of San Francisco. Please don't judge me if I'm wrong about that. And there wasn't a label and a description in the properties, so I couldn't grab that to add it to the pop-up. So you have some pretty generic, oh, there's nothing available here. Why that was important is because Who's On First got a hold of me and said, hey, we're actually working NavPlace into our workflow, but it's always going to be referenced, which they sort of explain here. And so I just wanted to throw out a proof that whether it's embedded or referenced, I can get the coordinates and draw them. So thanks to Who's On First for putting that together for me, giving me something to use. And then I showed you the one with the canvases. We don't have to go back and look at those, but the chronoscope and the geolocator can do those too. And so I'm going to load it up in the chronoscope because it's prettier. Here's what that looks like. So you can see the two dots drawn. And again, his pop-ups are a little bit better than mine. So that's the idea. You go into a web map platform. That web map platform is expecting IIIF resource in some way and knows coordinates are in NavPlace. So I'm going to parse it and draw it and connect it with that pop-up functionality, whatever that happens to be for your web map platform. So there is a little bit of work on the client side to do this and get this and set this up, but sort of the step-by-steps and how to do that will be explained more through recipes than through the extension itself. So you go to the extension for the real technical whys, and then you go to the cookbook to get visuals, this is how. And that's sort of a good way if you're not used to this or not sure about this, that's how you sort of get started and work your way into it. And for all of you that don't want to read all of that, then just go ahead and go down and copy the manifest and you're good to go. That's what I like about recipes. So those were some viewers, just your standard web map stuff. You saw the leaflet, you saw the chronoscope world. We could do this in Apple Maps and Google Maps and all of that. I don't need to go through and show you that. The question is, well, what does that mean for IIIF? How does a IIIF viewer show these things? Right now, you can't really expect it to because it just came out and nobody's coded in NavPlace detection into Mirador yet. But Mike Appleby, who's another IIIF Maps chair who's on vacation, so I'm showing this and hopefully I'm representing it well, has wrapped a Mirador 3 viewer alongside a leaflet or a Google Maps or something, right? So here are your manifests, and you go and you click on one, and it draws the coordinates that were in NavPlace on it. So this object had a NavPlace that was an outline of this section of the Ohio Canal, or Chesapeake Bay. And so that's why you see this area on the map outlined. So this is sort of an idea of, oh, well, if Mirador, if Universal Viewer, if Triple F viewers could support this by plugging in a web map platform, what might that look like? And I think this gives a pretty good representation of what that might look like. We have looked into writing a plugin. We haven't officially decided to do it yet. Obviously, we're just getting this out, so we're sort of seeing how the community uses it before we decide what might be the best things for us to do as far as the viewers are concerned. And for you, the community in this call, that's sort of the kinds of feedback we're looking for now. It's out. Here's some ideas on how it could be used, how it could look, but is that good for you? And if it's not, give me your use case and let's work towards it. And the last thing I do want to bring up is implications for discovery. And the reason I'm bringing it up is because it was brought up to me in some of our IIIF Maps calls we have. The idea being, well, if these resources have NavPlace, can I do something like give me the resources contained within the United States? Or find any resource whose label contains United States and then stick it in a United States heat map, that kind of thing. And I borrowed this statement from Stace, maybe he can explain it better, but essentially NavPlace can enable the map as a search facet for resources, which will become interesting. I don't really do that, so I don't have like use cases immediately in my brain, but for people in the discovery group, I'm sure you could easily explain what this could mean for discovery beyond my simple understanding here. So again, sorry, that was a lot. That was fast, but we want to leave time for questions and leave time for Bert to sort of explain what's coming up next. So what I would like to say is we recognize that just this NavPlace thing only covers a very small portion of geospatial practices out there. In my mind, sort of how I say it to people is it basically allows you to geolocate your resources. You can provide coordinates that are pertinent to your resource. And we say that phrase because it's not like by providing those coordinates, you're saying it is here now, or it will be there then. You're just saying this area is pertinent. So there's no actual, I forget how we phrased it, implications for like precision or like a temporal state. It's just those coordinates in connection with that resource. So for things like georeferencing or for timelines, this doesn't really cover that use case for you. And I bring that up because I'm going to hand it over to Bert to kind of talk about what's next and talk about some of those more complicated things we can get into now that we have a way to connect resources and coordinates. So Bert, if you're ready, that's my official handoff to you.
I am ready.
Cool. I'm going to stop sharing my screen then.
All right, and I'll share mine.
Yes.
Let me try. Share. Is it this one? I think. Yeah. Yeah. So my name is Bert Spaan. I'm involved with the Triple F Maps TSG, and I'm working on Omaps, which is an open source set of tools for georeferencing and warping Triple F maps. So now that NavPlace is finished, we can start thinking about even more exciting things, which, for example, are photo geotagging and map georeferencing with web annotations, and where NavPlace allows you it requires you to include the geospatial location inside of the manifest. If you use web annotations, you can just anybody can add those to an existing Triple F resource, so they can also reside on your own server or somewhere else. So geotagging, of course, the most simple form of geotagging is just tying a photo to a single geospatial location, but you can also do more complicated forms of geotagging. For example, this is a Leaflet plugin that I made when I was still at the New York Public Library. It allows you to not just submit a single geospatial location for a photo, but you can submit a field of view. So you can say, well, from this camera standpoint, this was more or less what the photographer was seeing. Of course, there's even more complex photo geotagging. This is a screenshot of Snapshot, which is a crowdsourcing tool for three-dimensional, where you can geotag photos in space. So you can, in this case, you can see a 3D world view with the photo and exact location. And then you're referencing a map is actually very similar. It also connects an image to geospatial locations, and then, of course, some software can use those mappings between pixels and geospatial locations and do, in this case, warping. But this can also work for photos where the photo is stretched to fit a certain viewport. So geotagging photos and georeferencing maps are actually pretty similar. They will tie an image to a geospatial location, or parts of an image, or multiple parts of an image, or even multiple geospatial locations. So the goal, I think, will be to create a specification for web annotation that can be used with any Triple F image to do all those things. So to geotag a photo to a single location, or to georeference a map, or to do 3D kind of geotagging like I showed. They were pretty similar, and I think what the Maps TSG should do is start maybe with the simplest use case, but then also think about more complex things and design a specification that can accommodate all those things. I'll now show you some examples of what a web annotation can look like to do those tasks. So this is a very simple single point geotagging web annotation. So you can see the geospatial GeoJSON point here, and then here the target of the web annotation is an image, in this case the full image, not a part of it, but just the full image. For a map, it's a little bit more complex. So you still have, the target is still an image, but you select a part of an image. In many cases, an image contains much more than just a map. There's legends, there's maybe a border, and with an SVG selector, you can remove all those stuff and just mask or select just the part of the image that you're interested in. And then you have another, in the body, you have GeoJSON again, but in this case, it's not a single geospatial location, but there are pairs of geospatial locations and pixel coordinates. And this is what it's called ground control point georeferencing. So you, to georeference a map, you take at least 3 control points that map geospatial location to a pixel location. If you do that, then software can do the warping based on those locations. And there's multiple algorithms to do that. I will now tell you a little bit more about Omaps, which is the software I'm working on. And Omaps can georeference and warp any map that's available through IIIF. So there's no need to set up any server infrastructure or to download images or to create accounts. All you need to do is just copy a IIIF manifest URL or image URL, and it works. This is, again, the same annotation that you showed a few slides ago. So it's a georeference map with the control points. I can, very tiny button, but I can copy this to my clipboard. I can paste it here. This is the Omelet Viewer, which is a website which uses WebGL to do in-browser warping of maps, and it all works based on this web annotation. And you can press View, and hopefully there it goes. So all that's needed to function, it loads the images right from IIIF. There's no server in between, and it only uses the web annotation that I pasted in, nothing else. This is a viewer, and I'm using open layers for this, and I'm working on a This is using a plugin for open layers, and I'm also working on a plugin for Leaflet. So then you can very easily create a web map with open layers or with Leaflet that uses my plugins and some of the Omaps modules to do in-browser map warping. But of course, there's many use cases where this won't work. For example, if you have traditional GIS software like QGIS or ArcGIS, and you cannot use, it's not easy to create a plugin for that. So I've just recently created the Omap style server, which turns georeference annotations. So one of the annotations that I just showed you, and it produces XYZ map tiles, which you can use, of course, in any GIS software. You can also use it in Leaflet or in open layers, but I'll just show you how it works. Yeah. So this is me going to the website of the Library of Congress and selecting a beautiful map of Glacier National Park in Montana. And I copy the Triple F manifest. I go to the Omaps editor, which is my georeferencing interface. I create a mask, which produces the SVG selector in the annotation. I go to Montana. I go to the north of Montana. I go to Glacier National Park. I click on, is it Lake McDonald? I think it is. I click on some other lakes of which I do not know the name. St. Mary Lake. Then the Omaps editor automatically stores this in the Omaps Annotation API. So I can paste the Triple F URL that I just used. And this is just an in-between step, which at some point will be removed. And then a tile URL is produced. I can go to QGIS, add a new XYZ layer, give it a name, add the template URL, double click, and there we are. Yeah, so this is showing the power of web annotations for your referencing maps. Of course, with you can do similar exciting stuff for photo geotagging. It just shows you that if you can annotate any Triple F object with some extra data, you can start building really great software which combines the power of Triple F and the power of having some server just giving you the images that you need with some extra metadata, allows you to do stuff like this. So I'm really excited for the work that we're going to do in the next month or maybe year. And I hope that at some point we'll be able to finish a specification will be turns into an official Triple F extension. Yeah, thanks.
Good job, Bert. I'll take it back over. Or is that everything you wanted to show? Thanks.
Yeah, that was it.
I do want to say when he first started doing that tile stuff, what I noticed is how much faster things through his tile server load, and seeing how fast that can happen, and that it can happen in the browser. I want everyone to realize what just happened, that he just did map warping and georeferencing in the browser live time, and that's pretty impressive. All right, Bert, I'm going to share my screen again. Can you stop sharing yours? Okay, so we've got about 20 minutes left. We wanted to have a nice Q&A session, so I will sort of open the floor for questions. And if we seem like there's not a lot of questions, I can go back and dive into something else a little more. We're kind of here for you. So does anyone have a question? Gethin, I see a hand raised.
Hi. Wow.
Hi.
That's brilliant. Well done. I'm really impressed with your work. I haven't seen this in a while, so congratulations. You know, that's I think everyone in the chat also, you know, is just testament to what you've achieved here. Can I just ask about the web map tile server? You're serving that as a web map tile service. So where is that being served from?
From some small Node.js cloud server.
Oh, okay. So if is that made available? I mean, if I went on Omaps and you know took a British Library Triple IIIF map, and would I be using up your clouds account, or I mean, how does that work?
Yeah, so the development and also the current hosting of the Omap style server is sponsored by Open Historical Map. So I think at some point when I will see that some institutions might be interested in this, maybe I might need to start thinking about a way to fund this in the future. But currently, anybody can use it for testing purposes. It's just a proof of concept currently. But yeah, at some point, I think I just want to see what people think and if people like it, if people start using it.
That's great. That's very generous as well. Thanks. I saw that in the comments, so that's really brilliant stuff. But I was just wondering if, say, we went and you know, did a fair bit of work on this georeferencing at the moment in Omaps, can we be assured? Is there a way to maybe download the JSON or similar from it? I just don't know about if we started working on that now, would there be some safeguard for the data we create?
Well, you can always download the annotations very easily. There's a button in the Omaps editor to do that. So yeah, so I haven't built in things like authentication, and I haven't built in things like version control. Those are all on my to-do list for next year. And also, of course, at some point, I hope to find institutions that really will start using Omaps, and then I think from then on, again, also the Omaps editor is currently a prototype, which works, but I cannot guarantee that all the data in the database will be very safe. But yeah, you can use it now and just download the annotations to your own laptop. Then you're fine. But at some point, I want to make it a little bit more professional and build in things like authentication and create tools for setting up a more complex crowdsourcing projects.
I imagine most people going into it will be going in with like public domain images or something that you're already free to use, so you'll be able to bring that back down. And then if you're generating web annotations, like he said, those should just be available that target that resource. You should either be able to take them and port them over to your own annotation store or whatever it is you need to do. For now, while it's in this sort of development state, I think that's sort of how you can pull it down and take it with you. I'm sure, especially if more people come to Bert with that kind of question, they'll figure out a way to one button click, take it with you. But yeah, don't forget, this is all prototype stuff. Is there any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question, but it's more a comment. It dawned on me that if we use NavPlace, the polygon stuff, as you've presented, Bert or Brian, I don't remember, then we already have the mapping of the maps for the world map. And then many libraries already provide bounding boxes in the metadata information. So it's up to you guys to convert the metadata bounding boxes into NavPlace polygons, and then we are all happy, more happy than right now already. I don't dare to ask a question, will you do it soon? But go for it.
Yeah, that's fair. Yes, no, we have not quite thought about that yet, right? I'm sort of looking for people like you, I didn't even know that was going to be a problem. I'm looking for comments like that to come from the community, so we know, even down to our simple nav, like especially down to our simple NavPlace published stuff, what piece of the community should we be supporting that we missed? So that would be a good problem. And no, I do not have an answer, and no, I would not dare answer you yet. Anybody else? Any questions, any comments, anything you want to go take another deeper look at?
Can you have several NavPlaces for the same resource? So for example, the painting Mona Lisa has moved during the centuries from Italy to Paris, and I don't know where Leonardo took it all the time. So one resource and several NavPlace coordinates.
So instead of that, so remember we tried to kind of boil things down to keeping that bland sort of simple use case at the top of our minds. If for the Mona Lisa, you're trying to express many different locations that are connected with it, you would just do all of them as different features within the same NavPlace. So you wouldn't have multiple NavPlaces, you would just have that one feature collection, and you'd put all your features in it that you need to show. It's not like you just said, it's moved across time and this and that. We never have NavPlace say, I gave you those coordinates, so that means that's where your resource is now. We didn't go so far as to saying NavPlace makes that statement. It just connects locations with resource. So Matthias, for you, it would be a sort of not complete way to do it, but it would just be any feature you wanted to show, stick it in the same feature collection, and attach that to the canvas.
Fair enough, of course. So the semantics of the NavPlace is up to the viewer and the client to interpret what's meant by the coordinates in relation to the resource.
Exactly. So that's why we said in our extension, it doesn't imply precision or any state of existence or temporality. It is just sort of supposed to be imagined as like a throughput for that GeoJSON. Right. Again, boiling down to the simplest use case, which is why I know it doesn't cover everything for everyone, but it was sort of, we didn't want to have to change anything about GeoJSON, right? Since we pulled in that spec, we didn't want to change how our resources worked in relation to GeoJSON. Otherwise, we'd be having to write a lot more. We'd be having to write another GeoJSON, which we didn't want to do. And of course, that means we've assumed the issues with GeoJSON. This point you brought up being one of them. It doesn't imply precision or state of existence or temporality. And so neither does NavPlace, which is why it falls short for a good handful of use cases. Yes. To answer that, though, the temporal timeline-y sort of use cases and situations are already prevalent. We already have people asking about that. I think NavDate and NavPlace can be used together to pull that off. I've been thinking about maybe trying to write a recipe that shows that, and that way just trying to do it myself to see what it might be like. So something as simple as you've got all those dots across your map, right? Maybe you want to filter by everything before 1700, everything before 1800, everything before 1900, everything after 1950. And you should be able to have those filters, right, as button clicks away. And I think you can use NavDate and NavPlace together to do that. Again, still falls a bit short. It doesn't quite make the connection that you're looking for, I think, for like state of existence and temporality, like it's here now, there then. But that's what the next steps are, right? Finding people with those use cases, finding people with the similarities of the implementations to implement those use cases, and then what's the lowest common denominator we can actually develop a standard or a best practice around. Yes, we're getting there, we're getting there. Good question. Anyone else?
Yeah, hi, this is Aaron from SFO Museum. I'll just jump in quickly and say, we're not using IIIF specifically for geo-related content, at least not yet, but to go back to what Brian was saying about multiple features, I'll just post a link in the chat. We've done a little bit of work using Bert's geotagging plugin for Leaflet, and the way that we're dealing with it is we record the point at which the geotagging point as the principal record. And then we have an alternate geometry for the field of view. So what you've got there are two GeoJSON features, but you could easily put that in a feature collection and shove that into an NavPlace. So that's just an example of what we're doing.
That's nice. Thanks. You guys are quick to implement. I like it.
And then the other thing, I also posted this in the chat, is the principal record has an ambiguous date. And we just use the Library of Congress's extended date time format and shove that into properties. You know, fundamentally, the problem you're always going to have with ambiguous dates is databases don't know how to query those. So, you know, there's two problems. There's how you choose to encode things, and then the mechanics of whether your database can handle it. So we've written quite a lot of code to turn extended date time format dates into literally numbers, where 0 is January 1st, 1970, but you know, whatever. So that's a thing if people want it.
Yes, very nice, very cool. And
That's also getting off topic, so I'll stop.
Yes,
now.
it is. Oh, well, I'm going to keep going a little further too. There are other things out there in connection with GeoJSON, especially with time stuff. If you've never looked at that, Carl Grossner's GeoJSON T, it's essentially an implementation of adding a time element to the GeoJSON object. He didn't go so far as to write the context for it, like the linked data context for it. But he did go far enough to provide the vocabulary and the semantics. Obviously, it was just not something we were ready to pick up yet. But the concept of adding these time elements with GeoJSON, it's very, very doable, but doable in an interoperable way is the hard part, right? We've all got to get our vocabularies right. We've all got to get our semantics and our syntaxes right, know what to expect. And that's exactly what he's touching on right there. And I have not attended enough discovery calls to really handle with those people. How might you go out and look for something based on its NavPlace? So like I fall short on imagining use cases and where the real troubles are with that. Yes.
Yeah, I would just I mean, I've seen Carl's stuff, and the only thing I would say is EDTF is now part of ISO 8601. So that's got a lot going for it. Meaning one, it has run through the standards bodies, and two, it's unlikely to change possibly ever.
Awesome.
And it is a very good set of semantics for representing ambiguous dates.
Good. Very good. We look forward to seeing those implementations. We're going to get there. Where are we at? Okay, last 5 minutes. Does anyone have a closing thought? Any of my other chairs that are in here? If you have a closing thought, this might be the time to get it out. If not, then anybody else can ask another question. And if not, give you your last 5 minutes back.
I'll give folks a minute to think of a last question, but I just want to jump in and say, I've been sort of hyping you in the chat, but I want to do it by voice. I just want to say thanks, Brian. You did a ton of work. You're not the only chair who did a ton of work on this, but like it's been a real amazing thing to see you pull this together very quickly. So just public thanks, Brian. Ton of work, not just on the NavPlace, but the recipes and the other chairs of this group. It's really sort of an amazing monument to what can be done in a community group and a technical group in a really short amount of time. So great work, folks.
Yes, definitely. Just the community energy and desire behind it, right? There was no resistance. It was the opposite. It was like sitting on the front of a wave. It was neat. You could tell people in IIIF, I mean, they've been ready for this for years. So they were just like, Brian, why is it taking so long? Go, go, go. It's nice. It's nice. That's especially for me. I loved that environment. That was great just to see people want to get it done. I mean, I had Dawn working on multiple weekends. This past weekend, she did a lot of work with me to try to make sure things were ready today. And it's just, you never know who the person is that's going to step up, but there's always somebody out there. It was good. I'm very grateful to the community. Don't attach just my name to any of this. I mean, I bugged everyone to help out and get this done. Okay. Well, then I might just give a real quick closing statement. No, Gethin.
Looks
Raising
like there's
hand.
a, yeah, raised hand.
If you got a minute, but I was just going to ask a question about persistent identifiers and the NavPlace. Do you see a role for, you know, gazetteer URIs or geonames URIs here, or do we, in terms of, for example, within software, turning those into coordinates?
Oh, I see. I might not be the best person to answer that, but I imagine for simpler, sort of like the XYZ. Okay, I might be going way off bounds here. This is a tough one for me to answer, but imagining Bert's XYZ sort of format and sort of how image APIs and stuff do their formats. If you developed an identifier in such a standard way that they were in there in a way that could be parsed out, I imagine we could take a referenced ID and just sort of automatically produce that as JSON, GeoJSON on the fly, but that's still much like resolving the object to get the feature collection back. So I'm not sure that we're exactly focusing on identifiers like that, or at least yet. Was that a terrible answer? Can someone back me up? Spot me, spot me.
It's just gonna add, I don't think we've discussed it much, and it's a great idea. We have got the way of using tagging annotations, which we're just looking to create a recipe. Soon we can link to external kind of authorities, and potentially that's one method of doing that type of linking. But it would be really interesting to get some more use cases in that repo for geo identifiers and see if NavPlace fits, or whether there's potentially another extension needed for that work.
All right, last chance, last call.
I was just going to say that this type of conversations, we can continue them as well in the regular maps calls that happen on Wednesdays, like just 1 hour before this community call. So you're all very welcome to join in and bring in your ideas and use cases, and we can keep the discussion going.
Yes, please. Great. Well, thank you, everyone. Thanks for showing up today. Thanks for listening. That's all. That's my closing statement. I just want to say thank you. The community's been great, and I can tell people are ready to use it, and I'm excited. I'm excited to see it start. I'm ready for the questions so that I can come up with answers that make it better.
Thank you, Brian and Virginia and Elliot and Bert, everyone on the Maps crew. We really appreciate you taking the time to present and share with the community, and everything looks really great. So thanks again. I will, once the recording is done processing, I will just add it to the notes document if you'd like to share it with anyone who you think might have been interested but was unable to attend. So thanks everyone for attending, and we hope to see you next month. All right, bye all.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.